My brother-in-law used my home office to mine crypto and blew out my $10,000 server rig, so I sued him for damages. I, 34 male, have spent the better part of my adult life grinding. I work as a senior network architect for a major cloud infrastructure firm. My job is entirely remote, which means my home office isn't just a room with a desk and a laptop. It is a highly specialized, climate-controlled workspace. The crown jewel of this setup was a custom-built, liquid-cooled server rig valued at just over $10,000. I engineered it myself to handle massive local virtualization loads, data processing, and continuous network testing. It represents years of saving, precise component sourcing, and meticulous assembly. My brother-in-law, Leo, 29 male, is the complete opposite. He is a textbook hustler who spends his days chasing get-rich-quick schemes, trading volatile meme coins, and trying to convince anyone who will listen that he is on the verge of becoming a tech mogul. In reality, he lives in a cramped apartment, has zero background in computer science, and owes money to almost everyone in our social circle. 2 months ago, my wife's parents sold their house to downsize, leaving Leo temporarily displaced while he allegedly looked for a new apartment. My wife, who has a massive blind spot when it comes to her younger brother, begged me to let him stay in our guest room for a few weeks. I was incredibly hesitant. I know Leo's history of neglecting boundaries, but to keep the peace in my marriage, I finally relented under one strict, non-negotiable condition. My home office was completely off-limits. I explained to both of them that the equipment in that room was tied to my livelihood, ran hot, required precise power management, and was absolutely not a toy. Leo nodded, smiled, and promised he wouldn't even breathe near the door. That was the first lie of many. For the first few weeks, things seemed manageable on the surface, though my utilities began to show an unusual spike. I noticed our electricity bill was ticking up significantly higher than normal, but I initially chalked it up to the summer heat wave and the fact that we had an extra adult living in the house, running the AC and doing laundry. I didn't probe deeper because my work schedule became incredibly demanding, requiring me to log in early and work late on a major infrastructure deployment for a client. Leo kept to himself during the day, mostly staring at his phone on the couch, or so I thought. The nightmare truly began last Tuesday. I had to leave the house at 6 a.m. to attend an all-day, in-person executive strategy meeting at our regional corporate headquarters, a rare occurrence that Leo knew about days in advance. I didn't get back home until roughly 7:30 p.m. The moment I stepped through the front door, I knew something was horribly wrong. The air in the main hallway felt unusually warm, and there was a faint, acrid smell of burnt plastic and scorched silicon hanging in the air. It's a highly specific odor that anyone who works with hardware recognizes instantly. It is the smell of catastrophic equipment failure. I bypassed the kitchen entirely and ran straight to my home office. The door, which I always leave locked via a smart keypad, was unlatched. I pushed it open, and a wave of stagnant, sweltering heat hit me square in the face. The room felt like a sauna. I looked over at my server rack, and my heart dropped into my stomach. The custom liquid cooling loop on my main rig was completely dry, the reservoir was cracked from extreme thermal stress, and the diagnostic LEDs on the motherboard were entirely dead. The system was completely bricked. I immediately looked around the room for an explanation, and it didn't take long to find it. Stuffed under my desk were 3 cheap auxiliary graphics cards attached to external PCIe riser cables, crudely spliced directly into my server's secondary power supply unit. Leo had literally broken into my office, opened up my custom chassis, and rigged his own bootleg cryptocurrency mining operation directly into my hardware. He had overwritten my secure hypervisor to boot a stripped-down Linux mining OS from a thumb drive, running the processors and the auxiliary GPUs at maximum capacity for God knows how many hours without proper ventilation or monitoring. To make matters worse, He had blocked the exhaust vents of the rack with a spare blanket to try and muffle the fan noise so I wouldn't hear it from the hallway. He had literally created a thermal death trap for a $10,000 machine. I didn't yell, I didn't slam doors. I went into a state of absolute icy professional focus. I pulled out my phone, took high-resolution photos of the modified wiring, the blocked vents, the cracked cooling reservoir, and the bootable USB drive still jammed into the front port. I then pulled up the access logs for my smart lock on my phone. Sure enough, the lock history showed that the office door had been forced open using a physical bypass key, a key that my wife kept hidden in her jewelry box for emergencies. Leo had hunted down the key while we were both out and used it to violate my workspace. I walked down the stairs into the living room, where Leo was sitting on the couch eating takeout, completely unbothered. My wife was in the kitchen preparing dinner. I stood in front of the television, held up my phone with the photos of the ruined rig, and asked him very calmly to explain exactly what he had done to my server. Leo didn't even look guilty. He actually smirked. "Oh, relax, man," he said, waving his hand dismissively. "I was just running a quick mining script. The markets are hitting a massive bull run right now, and I needed a machine with high throughput to clear some blocks. I was going to pay you back for the electricity once the coin cleared my digital wallet. It's called a side hustle." "You ran a liquid-cooled server at 100% utilization with the exhaust vents covered by a blanket," I said, my voice deadpan. "You fried the processor, melted the socket, cracked the cooling block, and destroyed $10,000 worth of custom hardware that I used to earn my living. The machine is completely totaled." At that point, my wife walked out of the kitchen, sensing the tension. Leo's smirk finally vanished when he realized I wasn't just annoyed, I was documenting the scene. He stood up, getting defensive. "It's just a computer, dude. You work for a massive tech company. You can just write it off or have your job buy you a new one. Don't be a controlling psycho. I'm trying to build financial freedom here, and you're crying over some silicon." My wife immediately jumped in, trying to play her usual role as the family mediator. "Look, I'm sure it was an accident. Leo didn't mean to break anything. Can we just figure out how much the broken part costs and replace it? There's no need to make this a massive fight." "The broken part is the entire system," I told her, turning to look at her directly. "And it wasn't an accident. He took the emergency key from your jewelry box, committed breaking and entering into a locked room he was explicitly banned from, and illegally modified my personal property for his own financial gain. This is property damage and theft of services." Leo scoffed, crossing his arms. "Theft? I lived here. You can't steal from family. You're being an absolute clown right now." I didn't argue with either of them anymore. I walked back upstairs, grabbed Leo's duffel bags from the guest room, and brought them down to the front hallway. I threw them onto the floor in front of him. "You have exactly 10 minutes to pack the rest of your garbage and get out of my house," I told him. "If you are still standing on my property in 11 minutes, I am calling the police to have you removed for trespassing, and I will hand them the forensic photos of the forced entry to my office." My wife started crying, screaming that I was destroying her relationship with her family and that I couldn't throw her brother out onto the street over a technical glitch. But I stood firm by the front door, looking at my watch. Leo realized I wasn't bluffing. He scrambled around, grabbed his clothes, shoved his bootleg mining GPS into his backpack, and stormed out the front door, cursing at me the entire way down the driveway. The next morning, I didn't go to work immediately. Instead, I took the entire server rig to an independent, certified hardware forensics and repair firm. I paid them a premium to conduct a full diagnostic assessment and draft an official, itemized report on the cause of the failure. 2 days later, they handed me a notarized document confirming that the system had suffered catastrophic thermal failure due to unauthorized hardware modifications and artificial airflow restriction. The total cost to replace the damaged components, salvage the encrypted data drives, and rebuild the system came out to exactly $10,450. I took that report straight to a local civil attorney, I didn't want a long, drawn-out debate with my in-laws about payment plans that Leo would never honor. I knew that if I didn't establish a firm legal boundary, this behavior would continue forever. My lawyer drafted a formal demand letter for the full value of the machine and served it directly to Leo at his parents' house, where he had run to hide. The moment the paperwork landed, my phone became a war zone. My mother-in-law called me screaming, accusing me of being a heartless monster who was trying to ruin her son's life over computer parts. She claimed that family supports each other through mistakes and that suing a relative was an unforgivable sin. My father-in-law sent me a long, condescending text stating that I was being deeply fragile and that I needed to drop the lawsuit immediately if I wanted to remain a part of their family. I didn't reply to a single one of them. I took screenshots of every message, logged the calls, and forwarded them directly to my attorney to be logged as evidence of attempted intimidation. The real strain, however, was inside my own home. My wife was completely furious with me. She refused to sleep in our bedroom, moving to the guest room that Leo had just vacated. She kept pushing the narrative that I was valuing material objects over human relationships, and that my actions were entirely disproportionate to what happened. "He made a mistake," she shouted at me during a massive argument over the weekend. "He's your brother-in-law. How can you look at a lawsuit and think that's appropriate for family?" "A mistake is spilling coffee on a keyboard," I told her, keeping my voice completely level. What Leo did was an intentional, calculated violation of my boundaries and my property. He stole your key, broke into my office, ran my equipment into the ground to line his own pockets, and then insulted me when he got caught. If you think I am going to swallow a $10,000 loss just to protect his fragile ego, you are completely delusional. Your family has enabled his parasitic behavior his entire life, but it stops at my door. When she realized I wouldn't back down or drop the suit, she threatened to use our joint savings account to pay for Leo's legal defense. I had already anticipated that move. The day after the incident, I had legally separated our finances, moving my income into a private account that she has absolutely no access to, leaving the joint account with exactly half of our shared funds untouched, so she couldn't claim I cleared her out. When she discovered she couldn't access my money to save her brother, she stopped talking to me entirely. The silence in the house has been thick, heavy, and exhausting, but I refuse to budge. Yesterday, Leo missed the deadline to respond to the formal demand letter, completely ignoring the legal notice because he genuinely believed his family would pressure me into dropping it. My lawyer immediately filed the formal civil lawsuit for property damage, financial loss, and court fees in county court. We are moving forward with full litigation. I am not playing games, and I am not looking for a compromise. Reflecting on this over the last week, I don't feel a single shred of regret or guilt. The family excuse is a weapon used by toxic people to force disciplined, hard-working individuals to absorb the costs of their incompetence and malicious behavior. If I hadn't filed this lawsuit, I would be telling Leo that my career, my time, and my boundaries mean absolutely nothing. I would be letting him know that he can walk into my home and destroy my property with zero consequences as long as he hides behind his mother's skirt. I have spent the last few days rebuilding my home office into a literal fortress. I replaced the keypad with a biometric fingerprint scanner, installed an internal security camera that uploads directly to an encrypted cloud server, and put a secondary physical deadbolt on the solid wood door frame. My new server components have arrived, and I am paying for them entirely out of my pocket for now, confident that I will recover the funds through the legal judgment against Leo. My marriage is currently in a very dark place, and I recognize that this situation might end it. But I have realized that if my wife cannot respect my right to protect my livelihood against a literal criminal act committed by her brother, then our foundation was already built on sand. I am done being the bigger person. I am done accommodating dead weight, and I am done allowing entitlement to compromise my security. Leo thought he could use my hard work to fund his digital fantasy, and now he is going to learn exactly how the legal system handles real-world consequences. The lawsuit is filed, the locks are secure, and I am standing my ground.